Hello, and welcome to Will's Infinite Library. I'm Will, and this is my Infinite Library. I wanted to first off today just thank you all so much for interacting in the comments, for watching these videos, because it really makes it feel like we are just hanging out and talking about books, which is what I really wanted to do with this channel. And there's a lot that I can do to create content, but I cannot have a conversation with myself. So thank you so much for making this really work in a way that I can't on my own. Feels like it's been a minute since my last video, and I just went to check, and it's been about 2 weeks since my last video, and I try to post weekly, so it has been about double the amount of time it usually is between videos, and it feels like even longer than that. So I'm happy to be back today to kind of give you an update on what I've been reading, thinking about books, and what are my plans for the rest of the year. So first off, I finally read my first Sally Rooney book. I've heard about her so much on Booktube, but had never read any of her works. And I read some synopses of them and thought they sounded pretty interesting. And for some reason, Beautiful World Where Are You just really grabbed me when I read the description of it. So let's talk a little bit about this book. Where to begin? I have a lot of thoughts, and I thought about making a separate video just to talk about this book, but I don't know if I want to dig too deep into them because I feel like I've kind of been able to refine my ideas and maybe have a more focused take on the book overall. So first up, what I want to say is that I've heard a lot of people saying Sally Rooney, you either love her or you hate her, but I want to offer a third point of view, which is it's a book and you can like things and dislike things, as I think we do with everything. We have parts of it we like, parts of it we don't like. You don't have to love or hate it. You can be medium on it. And I would say overall I'm kind of medium on it, but that is because I see both of the things that people love and people hate about it. And in my mind, they kind of come together to form this overall experience that's kind of like, some things could have been better for me personally, and some things were awesome, and it evened out. So what were those things? Well, let me tell you. First off, I want to say that I really loved the emails. Like every other chapter is these emails between two of the characters, and they were kind of like really just like deep conversations and thoughts that the characters had about life and the world around them, and what they wish was more, and what they want for their lives, and what they don't understand about their lives, and then like sharing their love for each other. And they were just really intimate, honest snapshots. But on the other side, on the hate it side, a lot of these emails were, I think, you could see Sally Rooney in them. You could see her ideas, and they became kind of dumps for things that she just wanted to say. And they didn't really, it's not that they didn't fit the characters, but they just felt like outside of the book in a way, if that makes sense. Another thing that I really like about it is her details are amazing. Like, you just feel like you're in these places with these characters doing exactly what they're doing. You can see them in every moment. You can see everything they're doing. The level of detail is amazing. Another thing that she does super well is dialogue. The dialogue is spot on. Again, it feels really realistic, but like that perfect literary version of what someone should have said or could have said in real life. It's not that it is exactly like word for word paraphrasing real conversations, but it just feels like the truest form of a conversation you can get to in literature. So her dialogue is on point. And now I wanted to talk a little bit about the things why I think people hate her books. And that is purely boiled down to one overall thing, and I have some supporting points, but the main reason, I think, is because they come off as kind of obtuse, and there are a lot of barriers that she puts up between the story and the reader. And I find this interesting because it feels very experimental in a lot of ways. She doesn't use quotation marks ever, which I found weird. And so I actually looked it up and read some interviews with her where she said she didn't see the point in them, which I think is interesting, but I don't love that. And then also there are not a lot of paragraph breaks. There are like full pages at a time without any paragraph breaks. And then as it goes on, you'll get like 2 pages in a row without any paragraph breaks, and then a whole chapter without any paragraph breaks. And again, this comes off as kind of experimental, and I find it interesting because it makes you have to really slow down your reading. And I read pretty fast these days because I'm trying to skim when I can and get as much in my head as I can, absorb as many books as I can. And the faster pace of life and multitasking just makes me want to read fast. But she makes me slow down, which is kind of frustrating, but I think is interesting as well. But not all experimentation is successful. And I think more often than not, these big blocks of text with no quotation marks and paragraph breaks makes it just hard to read. And it's kind of a pain in a lot of times. And you're not just slowing down, but you're just feeling like a little frustrated with the book itself. And I think that turns a lot of people away because it's definitely not a pleasing experience. And I don't think it's supposed to be, but it isn't. And the other thing about this kind of way that she's writing is it comes off as a bit disingenuous to the story to me. And this is where I see the writer seeping in, which goes back to my previous point about seeing Sally Rooney in the emails and like just sharing her thoughts and kind of dumping them there. We see the writer coming through a bit too much, I feel like. And I think that seems a bit disingenuous and takes away from the plot and the characters themselves having their own voices. And we see that in these emails where we see Sally kind of dumping her ideas is what it feels like. It may be totally wrong, but that's what it feels like. And I think where this could have succeeded is if she used this kind of style for certain characters, maybe, it would feel like we're getting a sense of their voice. But when all of the characters talk in the same way, they don't use paragraph breaks, they don't have quotation marks, they think in the same way, and you're jumping between characters, the narrator talks in the same way, it feels jumbled. And I often lost who I was supposed to be focused on. Like, especially at the beginning of the book, you focus on one character, then you jump to an email, then you jump to the other character and you assume it's the person that the email was written to, but you don't know because it calls her the woman and doesn't use her name, which you already know from the email. And I found that really disorienting. And even many chapters into the book, I had to keep reading back a line. Who is this? Is this character or that character? So I think that kind of barrier does a disservice overall. And to my previous point about not feeling genuine to the characters, I think the emails again are where this really, really comes through, because the emails are written in big blocks of text with minimal paragraph breaks as well. So we start to see that this isn't just the narrator that writes like that. The characters are writing like that as well. And to me, that seemed odd because sometimes I think we do write these long jumbled emails, but not always. And not every person does that. So when you see the characters, when they're supposed to be writing in their own voices, writing in the same way the narrator does, it feels a bit disingenuous and like the characters don't get to speak for themselves and that she's kind of taking over them and not letting them breathe and be fully realized people. And I think that is honestly my biggest barrier with this book. And then here's my personal biggest barrier, because those other ones, I look at them as kind of experimental and I admire that she tried them. And if they didn't ultimately work for me personally, I know a lot of people loved them, so I wouldn't say they're unsuccessful. Just for me, they didn't really work, and that's why I feel that way. But for me personally, in terms of my own reaction to it, what was my biggest barrier was I started finding myself thinking of it, trying to categorize the work in my mind. Like, what is this really? Like, is it a contemporary novel? Is it literature? Is it, what is it? And as I did that, I realized where I saw the most similarity was what I felt like this work was like an MFA project. And I was like, what does that mean? Why am I thinking this? Like, that's not a genre. But then I started to think back to my own MFA experiences and the kind of works that I was seeing there. And I think it's because it feels like it's trying a bit too hard, I think. Like, she's trying to make sure she makes a statement. It feels very political, and it feels very angsty without there being a lot to sympathize with in the characters. They seem like they live very privileged, well-off lives, and even like some of the characters are doing very well, and they complain a lot, and the overall tone feels very heavy and kind of dark, and it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth on that front. And the part when this all came to a head for me was there's this one part, I think it's in one of the emails that's coming from one of the characters, but feels like it's coming directly from Sally, and they're kind of going on this rant about how as long as there are like victimized minorities, there will always be an oppressor as the other side of that. It's two sides. And that the oppressors are born into this and the victims are born into this. And there's like a morality assigned, and the oppressor is basically always guilty in this situation. And that just came off as really whiny and like overly privileged in a distasteful kind of way. And from there, that email goes on to end with like complaining about how the real problem with the world is plastic. And it just came off as super, super privileged to worry about plastic when we have people suffering around the world and people who are being clearly victimized for their race or their religion or their sexuality or their sexual identity or anything else. We have people who are very clearly in need of help and understanding and support. And she's going on about plastic and how she feels bad about being the oppressor, and wow, life is so hard for her being born into privilege and being very successful and feeling like her life is a mess. And I don't want to say I don't sympathize, because I do sympathize. I think everyone has their struggles. I know these characters have their own struggles, but I think for me, what tipped it over the edge was that the overall tone of angst and dissatisfaction when so many people have, I don't want to say real problems, but real problems. That was Beautiful World, Where Are You? Finding Booktube has made me read more, which has made me want to start my own Booktube channel, which has made me want to get real physical books. So I have a cool background and I just enjoy reading them, but that's not sustainable. So I've been exploring other options. I put some books on hold at the library that I haven't received yet, and I got some ebooks. And so what I've been e-reading is One Last Step by Casey McQuiston, which I absolutely loved. I loved this book so much. It's been on my radar for a while, since before it came out. I was writing a book kind of about a romance on a train, and I heard about this book and I was like, oh, gotta keep that on my radar because I think it'll kind of inspire me and give me some good ideas. So it was on my radar, but then like it came out and I kind of was reading other stuff, didn't get to it. And then I got to it and I really enjoyed it. I didn't really know what to expect because I think it's categorized as a romance, which I don't typically read, but it didn't feel like only romance, if that makes sense. Like it felt like more of a mainstream contemporary novel with a strong romance focus, because there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's not all focused on the romance. I guess the main plot is, yes, but there are so many more elements to it and to the main character herself. The book really reminded me a lot of Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, which I did not expect, but was very pleased by because that's one of my favorite books of recent years. And like everything from the main character's quirky roommates and their weird projects to the overall feel and tone of being like kind of, I don't know, I guess like more of a comedy, but dealing with real issues, but being able to laugh at yourself, being able to laugh at the situation was really cool. I really enjoyed it and reminded me of that book as well. And then the other moment was a scene where one of the characters attends a party virtually, which happens in both of those books as well. So I found that kind of funny. In and of itself, I really loved this book. I loved the main character. I loved her friends, her struggles, her mom has her kind of being like a private investigator to investigate her own personal mystery of her family. And she gets kind of caught up in that, but then she finds her own mystery. She meets a girl on a train, and like there's this whole mystery that ensues of how did she get here? What is she? And that part is really cool as well. But overall, I just found it really enjoyable. It's an amazing like queer found family book, a variety of diverse characters. And it's just overall fun and interesting, exciting, I don't know, it's just a full package. So I really loved this book. I would highly recommend it if it sounds interesting based on those things, based on contemporary, based on mainstream, based on romance. There's also time travel involved. There's also, yeah, that queer found family. If any of that sounds interesting to you, don't wait. Go check out One Last Stop. The other book that I just started reading is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This is a young adult fantasy novel that involves books, so sounds great to me. I haven't read a lot of YA fantasy recently, but it's a genre that I enjoy, and I feel like the holidays is a great time to kind of dive back into that. It's something that I don't like reading all the time for some reason. Like, I feel like I get them mixed up in my head too much if I read too many, but like once in a while I love to dive in, and I feel like the holidays is a great time for that because it's just fun and enjoyable. I've only gotten in 2 chapters so far, but I'm really enjoying it. So more on that to come. And then the last book that I've just started as well is Carry On by Rowell. Another book that I have never read anything by this author, another queer young adult book, fantasy as well. So this one, I've decided to challenge myself, and I've gotten a little bit further in A Hora da Estrela, but I feel like I need something a little lighter to try to read. So I'm trying to read Carry On in Portuguese. I'm using the Kindle app for this. I'm using the Apple reader for everything else, but why I'm using the Kindle app in the iPad for this is because I absolutely love how easy it is to look up a word. So I can just be looking at the text, and then I'm like, I'm not sure what this is. So I pop it open and it tells me what it is instantly, just clicking on the word. So that eliminates so many of the barriers of reading in a foreign language. And I flew through the first chapter pretty easily. So I really enjoy it for that. And that is a really good benefit of e-readers. That's something that you just can't do in a paper book, because I've been reading a paper book and it takes me so long because I have to like have my phone or a computer and like put down the book, type the word, see what it means, go back to the book and look up the next word, and it takes so long, so it slows me down. So this is seamless and I can just read straight through. I think it'll be much more enjoyable and make it more of a fun experience that I can get through faster and more easily and just start absorbing the language more naturally. So yeah, so those are my updates for today. That's what I've been reading. I think I'm gonna do one more video this year that's kind of a best of the year, probably after Christmas, before New Year's, but that's all I have planned for the rest of the year at this point. Thank you so much for hanging out again, as always. If you have any reactions to the books that I talked about today, you have some hot takes on Sally Rooney's books as well, or reactions to what I said and want to tell me I'm completely wrong, that's totally cool too. I would love to hear from you in any capacity, and together we can make this book hangout feel truly infinite, and we can just keep the conversation going, whether that's posting in the comments or just letting me know what you thought and what you'd like to see more videos about in the future. So thank you again so much for hanging out. I hope you have a happy holiday season with your family and loved ones, or whoever you're spending time with, whether they are virtual or in person. I will be doing mostly virtual this year because that's the world we live in. But wishing you all the best for the rest of the year. And like I said, I'll probably catch you again one more time before we do start 2022. All right, thanks again. See you next time.